Greetings, I'm Tom Bankston. I'm publisher of BankBeat magazine and bankbeat.biz. This is the BankBeat Quick Takes video blog, and my guest today is Heather Malcolm, who is with the Bank of the Rockies in Livingston, Montana. She's an ag loan officer, and she's also the chairman of the ABA Ag and Rural Bankers Committee. Heather, how are you today?
I'm good, Tom. Thank you for having me on today.
Good. And we're having you because you were featured in BankBeat magazine as a rising star. We honored 6 bankers in the July issue with the Rising Star program. And it's a real treat to connect with each of the selections and talk to them a little bit about their careers and what they're seeing in the banking industry. So why don't we open up, as you just reflect on your career, what are some of the changes you have seen in the industry in the time you have been active in the industry, and which of those changes have had the biggest impact on you?
Well, I've been in banking for 16 years, and before that I was a farm loan officer for FSA, so I've been in banking for a couple of years. The biggest change that I have seen is just the technology aspect of banking. It's the use of automated underwriting as well as all of the other technology advancements that we've seen over the past 15 years and how that's affected us. One of the things with my customers right now, I get text messages about their draws for their lines of credit. It's not a phone call, so it's using different forms of that advanced communications are the biggest things that I've seen a change in the industry.
That's interesting, the use of text. I always consider that a pretty informal method of communication, but it is kind of creeping its way into standard business use, which is sometimes a little bit startling.
It is, especially here in Montana. Sometimes they don't have full cell service, but they can have where they can send a text message. And I have one customer who texts me pretty early in the morning saying, I paid bills last night. Can I get a draw on my line of credit to cover those? So that's worked out pretty well.
Yeah, good for you. That's interesting. And how about other changes among the customers? Have you found that their needs have changed over the years?
Yes and no. In ag banking, it's still the same lines of credit, term loans, that type of thing. But we're getting a little bit more of a sophistication from the borrower, so their operations are changing. So we have to structure their lines of credit a little bit differently or look at a different type of term loan for them. So the type of loan in itself is expanded, but it's still the same ag banking philosophies. It's just expanded a little bit.
And of course, you are deeply involved in the ag lending sector. And I'd like to ask you just to reflect a little bit on the ag economy right now. What do you see? First of all, maybe talk about Montana and then share your observations for a broader part of the country.
Well, I have been involved in agriculture my entire life. I grew up on a cow-calf operation in southwest Montana. I got my first cow when I was 7 years old. So I have been involved in ag, 4-H, and FFA my entire life. As far as the ag industry in Montana right now, it has seen a little bit of a comeback. Prices did go down with the COVID affecting our supply chains, and a lot of our cow-calf producers were worried about their fall calf prices, but we have seen those come back up right now. We're seeing the summer video sales had some really good prices on them, as well as there's been contracts in the countryside where we weren't sure earlier in the springtime if that was going to be the case. So we have seen those. The prices are okay. They're not the best, but they're not the worst. So it's enough to make people make ends meet for this year, which is good, as a lot of the commodity prices right now are lower. So we are seeing a little bit of a optimism back in the cattle market right now, which is a lot of what Bank of the Rockies, what our home portfolio is a lot of cow-calf producers.
And as you talk to your customers, do they, as they take the long view, are they generally optimistic about agriculture and its future, or do they express some pessimism? And I say that thinking about consolidation. I mean, the same way that we've seen consolidation in the banking industry, I know we've seen on the farm and on the ranch, and farms and ranches seem to get bigger and bigger. And is that just a trend that is inevitable, or do people see maybe some change there?
So I think, first of all, farmers and ranchers are the eternal optimism. It will always be better next year. That's what you continuously hear. It will always be better. As far as the consolidation part, we do see some of that in the countryside. What we see a lot here in Montana is a lot of the smaller farmers and ranchers and beginning farmers are getting started in agriculture. So that's been helpful in that area where it's not the larger consolidations that you see.
So you are seeing new people choosing farming, agriculture as a career, and so they're entering the profession.
Yes, we here at Bank of the Rockies, we have a really good beginning farmer program that we utilize with FSA. So we've helped quite a few new beginning farmers and ranchers, whether they're younger or a little bit older, who are still beginning farmers and ranchers who want to get into agriculture. So we are seeing quite a few of those operations start.
Okay, well, that seems very positive for the ag sector. Talk a little bit more about your own career. You mentioned you've been at this a long time. I'm curious if there are any principles that you've kind of lived by that have guided your career decisions, or maybe was a mentor or somebody who is an example to you in the industry.
So my guiding principles have always been know what you're going to do and what you say, make sure that you can fulfill that promise. So do what you say you're going to do. Don't make an offer or a loan offer that you can't fulfill. So you have to be able to be honest and have integrity to follow through in everything that you do. So that's one of the biggest principles that I use in my daily life as well as in my banking career. And the other thing in agriculture, and I know I keep going back to that, but that's a large part of my life and my banking career, is that agriculture part of it is you have to understand the different parts of agriculture. And if you don't understand it, then go learn about it. Agriculturalists can see through a line of not understanding very quickly. And so you have to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk and understand all of the things behind that at the same time.
Give us an example there. I think that's really interesting.
So when I worked for a different office for a while for Bank of the Rockies in another community. I was 30 going in there, young female ag loan officer. This area didn't have any female loan officers. So I walked in to meet with a customer who was coming in to renew his line of credit. And he sat down across the desk from me. He was a little bit older and he goes, "Why do I have to listen to you?"
Wow.
Took me by complete surprise.
Yeah.
And I thought a minute of, okay, how am I going to respond appropriately to this question of questioning a loan officer who's sitting across from you? And so then I realized I just need to explain my background in agriculture and the things that I knew in a humble type way as well, so I didn't come off as a know-it-all. And so through that discussion, he learned about me and I learned about him, and then it all worked out. But in that first instant, he didn't want to work with a younger female ag loan officer. That was not anything he had ever done, and he didn't want to do it. So that's
good communication is of course key to any relationship. So it sounds like, it sounds like that did work out. But so one of the things now is we've been living through this pandemic, and the ability to communicate and the way we cultivate relationships has completely changed. We're doing these Zoom meetings now. That's new for me. I'm new for a lot of people. How are you finding it? Doing the work that you have to do to succeed in ag banking, operating under this sort of these new parameters.
So with the ag banking and the ag culture right now, we still do a lot of phone calls. We do have some Zoom meetings for committee meetings. But the agricultural part, they're still, if they're in town and they're looking at a new tractor or swather, they'll still stop by the bank. Our lobbies are open, so they'll come in and visit with me. But I will say that there's been a lot more phone calls instead of the customer stopping by at the bank if they're in town. So it's changed a little bit in our ag world, but it hasn't dramatically changed at this point in time.
Okay. You have been very active in the American Bankers Association. I mentioned that you're chair of the ABA Ag and Rural Bankers Committee. Tell me a little bit about that obligation and why you have chosen to make that commitment. It's a big commitment to run a national committee.
It is. So I was selected to serve on the planning committee about 6 years ago for the national conference. So that really opened the door to me learning about ABA and all the great things they do for banks of all sizes. So within that, I served on the planning committee, and then I was selected to serve on the Ag and Rural Bankers Committee as a member. And then through my time and serving on the Ag and Rural Bankers Committee and volunteering to help with projects and being very actively involved, that's how I was chosen to go to vice chair and now chairman of the committee. I believe that ABA has the best interest of all the banks at heart, and I know it's very difficult when there's a small bank like us. We're a $157 million bank, as well as the very large banks, but they keep all of our interests together, and they do a very good job of representing us in all facets of what they do. So I really believe in what the ABA stands for. So the commitment to be chair of this committee this year has been a large time commitment. Usually there's more travel that's involved with it. This year didn't have to do as much travel, but just because I believe so wholeheartedly in ag lending and how important it is to our country, that's why I wanted to be involved, and I'm very blessed that I've been able to be involved and be as active as I have been.
You've also been active in some of the banking schools, is my understanding. And in fact, you got an ag lender officer track reestablished at a banking school. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I served on the advisory committee for the commercial lending schools for ABA. And through that, as well as the Ag and Rural Bankers Committee, we saw a need for an ABA-sponsored school for ag lenders. So by serving on both committees, it gave me a really good opportunity to take that thought and run with it and help set up the school. We had our first school last year. We were going to have it this year, but then, of course, COVID hit, so we weren't able to have it, but we are planning to have it next year. So in that, education is so important for ag lenders, and I really want to help ag lenders learn more to be the best lending staff that they can be, so that they can help their operations and their customers and their producers be the best that they can be. So with that, I did help set up the school, the instructors, the whole content of it, worked on it with a couple other people on our commercial lending school board. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we got it all started again.
That sounds awesome. We have run up against our time limit here, so we're gonna bring this to a close. But Heather, thank you very much for being a part of our Bank Beat Quick Takes video blog. Congratulations on your selection as a rising star in banking by Bank Beat Magazine. So I'm grateful to our audience. Thanks for being with us, and we'll catch you next time.